It was a September day in Knoxville, Tennessee. Andrew Franklin rode his bike as his father Tom looked on. Neither knew that their lives were about to change.
Andrew started pushing on his eye and saying, "Daddy, my head hurts." And he asked for some Benadryl because he'd been having allergy problems. So Tom put a wet washcloth on his head.
This was not a case of allergies. Andrew's parents didn't know it at the time, but a clot had stopped the flow of blood on the left side of his brain. Andrew was having a massive stroke.
Tom was bent over talking to him, and when he raised up, he had this look on his face, and it was just pure terror. He said, "I can't get him to respond to me." He would throw up, and he would suck it back in because he was breathing so hard. It was very scary, and I said, "We need to go to the hospital right now."
For the next 2 days, the doctors at Children's Hospital used every tool they had to diagnose Andrew's condition.
The blood pressure was normal, temperature was normal, pupils were reactive, and then they tried to get him to stand on the scale, and his legs just went limp, and he couldn't stand. So they were stunned. They didn't know what was going on.
Critical time was passing. Finally, after taking an MRI, Andrew's doctor delivered the devastating news.
He said, "Andrew's in trouble, and it's really bad. He's had a stroke, and it's a really bad stroke, and he's in big trouble." Well, I couldn't believe he was telling me that my little boy was about to die, because he was fine the other day. 2 days before, there was nothing wrong with him. It was almost like, this can't be happening. It was almost like watching it on TV.
The only hope the doctors offered was a risky brain surgery, rarely performed on children.
Andrew had suffered, or what we had documented was a very large stroke and a big blood vessel in the left side of his brain. And the left side of the brain, for most people, about 95% of people, is the dominant part of the brain that's responsible for most things like speech and language. And at that point in time, Andrew was very critical.
The challenge with Andrew was not only we're working in small arteries that are in a normal human, but now we have even smaller because they're inside a child.
I walked over, and he was laying on the table, and he looked so small. I still could not believe this was happening. And he had all of these IVs, and they had a cap on his head. And I was just talking to him, and I said, "Just don't leave me. You come back to me, okay?" We got to kiss him and tell him we loved him. And the doctor said, "We gotta go."
As they rolled Andrew away to the operating room, the only thing Andrew's family and friends could do was pray.
Everybody in the room gathered and held hands in a humongous circle and just said a prayer of thanks. And anybody that wanted to pray could pray out loud. With each prayer that we said, it took the sadness and the fear away. It took it completely away, and it was replaced with love and joy and happiness. And at the saddest time of my life, it was the happiest time of my life too, because there is such power. I've never experienced anything like it.
2 hours passed. Andrew survived the surgery, but his prognosis remained grim.
And he said, if he even survives, most likely he will be in a wheelchair. He could be blind. He'll never walk, never talk. He will be severely disabled. He won't be the same boy. I almost just let it go in one ear and out the other because I prayed nonstop. And that's not what God was telling me.
Andrew spent 2 weeks in intensive care. He was in and out of consciousness, but still unresponsive.
One of the last nights that he was in intensive care, he was awake, and I noticed he was looking at the TV, and I thought, okay. And I handed him the remote control, and he changed the channel. So I knew he was in there. I knew he was in there.
Over the next few days, Andrew's recovery progressed dramatically. He began breathing on his own, so the doctor removed his ventilator, and then his feeding tube. Soon he was able to speak and move well beyond the expectations of the doctors.
His progress is remarkable compared to when I first saw him. He could not talk, he could not speak or understand speech. He could not move his right arm or his right leg at all at that point. I think it's a miracle that he has survived and is doing as well as he is.
Within a month of the stroke, Andrew was walking again. And in just 4 months, Andrew met all of his rehabilitation goals. Mobility on his right side continues to improve.
He does everything a regular 10-year-old boy would do. God had shown me so many things in that short amount of time. I know I can trust him, and he was telling me to trust him, so that's what I did. That's all I had to do is trust him. I hope we're never ever put in a position like that again, but I know that no matter what comes at us, God is there. He will never leave us alone, and he will get us through it, and he will see us through to the other side.